There's something almost mystical about the number 100. Not 1,000, not 10, 100 ounces of silver. And if you've been watching what's happening in the precious metals market right now, you're starting to understand why this specific target has become the rallying cry for a growing movement of Americans who see what's coming. Because here's what nobody's telling you. Reaching 100 ounces of physical silver isn't just about having a shiny stack in your safe. It's about crossing a threshold that separates those who will weather the coming storm from those who won't. And the clock is ticking faster than most people realize. Let me show you something that should make your blood run cold. Right now, as I'm recording this, silver is trading in a range that most analysts didn't think we'd see for another few years. But here's the thing that keeps me up at night. It's not the current level that matters. It's what happens when the world wakes up to the reality that there simply isn't enough physical silver to go around. And when I say not enough, I'm not being dramatic. I'm talking about a mathematical certainty that's been building for decades, and we're approaching the breaking point. You see, silver occupies this unique position in the financial world. It's simultaneously an industrial metal that's absolutely critical to modern technology, and it's a monetary metal with thousands of years of history as real money. Think about that for a second. Every solar panel, every electric vehicle, every smartphone, every 5G tower, every medical device, every water purification system requires silver. Not wants it, requires it. There is no substitute for silver's unique properties in most of these applications, and at the same time, central banks and smart money around the world are quietly accumulating it as a hedge against the very real possibility that our current monetary system is living on borrowed time. Now, before we go any further, I want to make sure you have access to something I put together. There's a free guide in the description below that breaks down the wealth protection strategies that thousands of American retirees are using right now. It's completely free, and it might be the most important thing you read this year. Check that out when you get a chance. But back to this 100-ounce target. Why that number? Why not 50? Why not 200? Well, let me tell you a story about a man I'll call Robert. Robert is a retired engineer, 72 years old, living in Arizona. Smart guy. Worked his whole life, saved diligently, did everything right according to the conventional wisdom. He had about $400,000 in his 401k, mostly in index funds and bonds. Traditional retirement portfolio, safe and boring, right? That's what his financial advisor told him for 30 years. Then something happened that changed everything for Robert. He started noticing that his grocery bill was climbing. Not a little, a lot. His property taxes went up. His insurance premiums doubled. His medications cost more. And when he looked at his retirement account statements, sure, the numbers were going up, but his purchasing power was going down. He could feel it every single day. The dollars in his account were worth less and less in the real world. And that's when Robert started asking questions that his financial advisor couldn't answer. He asked, "If the government keeps printing money, what happens to my savings?" His advisor said not to worry about it. He asked, "If there's a real crisis, can I actually access my money?" His advisor changed the subject. He asked, "What happens if the dollar loses its status as the world's reserve currency?" His advisor looked at him like he was crazy. So Robert started doing his own research, and that research led him to silver. Now, Robert didn't go all in. He's not a gambler. But he made a decision that over the next 18 months he was going to accumulate 100 ounces of physical silver. Not paper silver, not silver ETFs, not mining stocks, physical metal that he could hold in his hands. And here's what's fascinating. Robert told me that the moment he hit that 100-ounce mark, something shifted in his psychology. He felt like he had crossed a threshold. He had real money. Money that had been money for 5,000 years. Money that no government could print. Money that no bank could confiscate with a keystroke. Money that would still be money long after the current system had collapsed and been rebuilt. And Robert's not alone. There's a whole community of people who have made 100 ounces their first major milestone. Some call themselves silver stackers. Some call themselves sound money advocates. Some just call themselves realists. But they all understand something that the mainstream financial media refuses to acknowledge. We are living through the end game of a monetary experiment that has never worked in human history, and physical precious metals are the only assets that have survived every single currency collapse that has ever occurred. Let me give you some context here because this isn't just theory. This is historical fact. In 1971, President Nixon closed the gold window. That was the moment when the dollar stopped being backed by anything real and became a pure fiat currency, a piece of paper backed by nothing but faith in the government. And what's happened since then? The dollar has lost over 98% of its purchasing power. Think about that. If your grandfather had $100 in 1971, that same $100 today buys what $2 would have bought back then. That's not inflation. That's currency destruction in slow motion. But here's where it gets really interesting. During that same period, silver has been on this wild roller coaster ride. It hit $50 an ounce in 1980. Then it crashed. It hit nearly 50 again in 2011. Then it crashed again. And every time it crashed, the mainstream media declared that silver was dead, that it was a barbarous relic, that only crazy people bought physical metal. But here's what they never tell you. Every single time silver crashed, it eventually came roaring back. And each time it came back, it went higher than before. Because the fundamentals never changed. The supply and demand dynamics never changed. The monetary instability never changed. It just got worse. And now we're in a situation that's unprecedented in human history. We have governments around the world that are so deeply in debt that there is no mathematical way they can ever pay it back. We have central banks that have printed more money in the last few years than in the entire previous history of their existence. We have a global financial system that's held together with digital duct tape and prayer. And we have a generation of investors who have never experienced a real crisis, who think that stocks only go up, who believe that the government will always bail everyone out, who have no concept of what happens when the music stops. But the smart money knows. The central banks know. That's why they've been accumulating gold at record rates. That's why billionaires are quietly moving assets into hard assets. That's why family offices are diversifying into precious metals. They're not doing this because they're pessimistic. They're doing this because they're realistic. They understand that every fiat currency in history has eventually gone to its intrinsic value, which is zero. And they're making sure that when that happens, they're holding assets that will still have value. Now, let's talk about why silver specifically and why 100 ounces is such a powerful target. Silver has this unique characteristic that makes it different from gold. Gold is primarily a monetary metal. It's too expensive for most industrial uses. But silver is both. It's money and it's an industrial commodity. And that creates a situation where silver is being consumed at a rate that far exceeds new production. Every year, billions of ounces of silver are used in industrial applications and never recovered. It goes into landfills. It's gone forever. Meanwhile, above-ground stockpiles of silver have been declining for decades. Here's a number that should shock you. The gold-to-silver ratio in the Earth's crust is about 1:8. For every ounce of gold in the ground, there are roughly 8 ounces of silver. But right now, the price ratio between gold and silver is much higher than that, which means that silver is historically undervalued compared to gold. And when you combine that with the supply deficit, with the industrial demand, with the monetary demand, with the fact that most silver is produced as a byproduct of other mining operations, you start to see why some analysts believe that silver could be the investment opportunity of a lifetime. But here's the thing that most people miss. You can't wait until everyone else figures this out. By the time silver is on the front page of every newspaper, by the time your neighbor is talking about it at the barbecue, by the time your financial advisor is recommending it, it will be too late. The premiums will be through the roof. The availability will be scarce. The dealers will have waiting lists. That's what happened in 2008. That's what happened in 2020. And it will happen again, except this time it's going to be worse because the underlying fundamentals are worse. So why 100 ounces? Well, let's do some math. 100 ounces of silver represents a significant store of value, but it's still achievable for most middle-class Americans. It's not some impossible goal that only the wealthy can reach. If you're buying silver at current levels, 100 ounces represents an investment that most people could accumulate over time through disciplined saving. Maybe you buy 5 ounces a month. Maybe you buy 10 ounces a quarter. Maybe you take a portion of your tax refund and convert it to silver. The point is, it's achievable. But here's what 100 ounces represents in practical terms. Throughout history, 100 ounces of silver has been enough to sustain a family for a significant period of time during a crisis. It's enough to barter with. It's enough to preserve wealth. It's enough to give you options when others have none. Think of it as your financial insurance policy. You hope you never need it, but if you do need it, you'll be grateful you have it. And let me be clear about something. I'm not saying you should take all your money and buy silver. That would be foolish. What I'm saying is that having 100 ounces of physical silver as part of a diversified wealth protection strategy is one of the smartest moves you can make in the current environment. It's a hedge against currency debasement. It's a hedge against financial system instability. It's a hedge against government overreach. It's a hedge against the unknown unknowns that keep risk managers awake at night. Now, I want to address something that's probably going through your mind right now. You're thinking, this sounds great, but what about my retirement accounts? I've got money sitting in a 401k or an IRA. Can I protect that? And the answer is yes. Quick aside here. If you're sitting on $100,000 or more in retirement accounts, there's a strategy that more and more Americans are using to protect that wealth. It's called a gold IRA, and it allows you to hold physical precious metals inside your retirement account without triggering taxes or penalties. I put together a comprehensive guide on how this works. It's in the description below. Covers everything you need to know about getting physical gold and silver into your retirement account the right way. Worth checking out if you've got significant retirement savings you want to protect. Anyway, back to why this 100-ounce target matters so much right now. The thing is, we're at a unique moment in history. We're watching the global monetary system undergo a transformation that happens maybe once every few generations. The BRICS nations are working on alternatives to the dollar. Central banks are repatriating their gold. Countries are settling trade in currencies other than dollars. The petrodollar system that has underpinned American economic dominance for 50 years is cracking. And when that system breaks, and it will break, the people who are holding real assets are going to be in a very different position than the people who are holding paper promises. Let me tell you about another person I know. Her name is Margaret. She's a retired teacher, 68 years old, living on a fixed income. Margaret doesn't have a lot of money. She's not wealthy. But 5 years ago, she started buying silver, just a little bit at a time. An ounce here, 2 ounces there. She cut back on some discretionary spending. She stopped eating out as much. She canceled subscriptions she didn't really need. And she put that money into physical silver. It took her 3 years, but she reached her goal of 100 ounces. And here's what Margaret told me. I sleep better at night knowing I have that silver. I don't care what the price does day to day. I know that no matter what happens to the dollar, no matter what happens to the banking system, no matter what happens to the stock market, I have real money. Money that has been money for thousands of years. Money that will still be money when everything else has failed. That's the psychology of reaching 100 ounces. It's not about getting rich quick. It's about having a foundation of real wealth that can't be inflated away, that can't be confiscated digitally, that can't be devalued by government decree. Now, let's talk about the mechanics of actually accumulating 100 ounces, because this is where a lot of people get tripped up. First, you need to understand the difference between paper silver and physical silver. Paper silver includes things like ETFs, mining stocks, futures contracts, and certificates. These are all fine for speculation and trading, but they're not the same as physical metal. When you own paper silver, you own a promise that someone will deliver silver to you if you ask for it. But what happens if everyone asks at the same time? What happens if the entity that issued that promise goes bankrupt? What happens if there's a force majeure event and they simply can't deliver? You're left holding a worthless piece of paper. Physical silver is different. When you own physical silver, you own the actual metal. It's in your possession. It's under your control. Nobody can take it away from you with a computer keystroke. Nobody can dilute it by printing more. Nobody can confiscate it without physically coming to your location. That's the difference between real wealth and paper wealth. And in a crisis, that difference becomes everything. So, when you're accumulating your 100 ounces, you want to focus on physical metal. Now, there are different forms of physical silver. You've got coins, you've got rounds, you've got bars. Each has advantages and disadvantages. Coins like American Silver Eagles or Canadian Maple Leafs are government-issued, highly recognizable, and easy to sell, but they typically carry higher premiums over the spot price. Rounds are privately minted, usually have lower premiums, but might be slightly less liquid. Bars come in various sizes and generally have the lowest premiums, but larger bars can be harder to sell in small increments. My advice for someone building toward 100 ounces? Start with recognizable coins. Get familiar with what real silver looks and feels like. Learn how to spot fakes. Build a relationship with a reputable dealer. Then, as you get more comfortable, you can branch out into rounds and bars to lower your average cost per ounce. The key is to buy from reputable sources, verify what you're getting, and store it securely. And speaking of storage, this is crucial. Your 100 ounces of silver needs to be stored properly. Some people use a home safe. Some people use a safety deposit box, though that comes with its own risks if there's a banking crisis. Some people use private vault storage. There's no one right answer. It depends on your situation, your risk tolerance, and your access needs. But whatever you do, don't leave it sitting in a drawer somewhere. Secure it properly. Now, let's talk about timing, because this is where things get really interesting. A lot of people ask me, should I wait for silver to drop before I start buying? And my answer is always the same. If you're building a position for wealth preservation, not speculation, then you should be buying consistently over time, regardless of short-term price movements. This is called dollar cost averaging, and it's one of the most effective strategies for accumulating physical metals. Here's why. Silver is volatile. It can swing wildly in the short term, but over the long term, the trend is clear. As fiat currencies lose purchasing power, as industrial demand increases, as supply constraints tighten, silver's value in real terms goes up. So if you're trying to time the market, trying to catch the absolute bottom, you're going to drive yourself crazy, and you'll probably miss the opportunity entirely. Instead, set a budget. Decide how much you can allocate to silver each month. And buy consistently. Some months you'll pay more per ounce. Some months you'll pay less. But over time, you'll build your position at a reasonable average cost. And here's something else to consider: the premium over spot price. When you buy physical silver, you pay more than the spot price you see quoted on financial websites. That premium covers the cost of minting, distribution, and dealer markup. Premiums fluctuate based on demand. When demand is low, premiums are low. When demand spikes, premiums can go through the roof. I've seen times when premiums on Silver Eagles were $8 or $9 over spot. That's insane. But it happens when supply is tight and everyone wants physical metal at the same time. So part of your strategy should be to buy when premiums are reasonable. Don't chase the market when premiums are elevated unless you absolutely have to. Be patient. Build your position methodically. Remember, you're not trying to make a quick profit. You're building a foundation of real wealth that will protect you and your family for decades to come. Let me share one more story that really drives this home. I know a guy named Tom. Tom is a small business owner, 55 years old. He's done well for himself. Not wealthy, but comfortable. A few years back, Tom started getting nervous about the economy. He could see the writing on the wall. The debt levels, the money printing, the political instability. So he decided to take action. He set a goal: accumulate 100 ounces of silver within 2 years. And he did it. He bought a little bit every month, sometimes more, sometimes less, depending on his cash flow, but he stayed consistent. Then something happened that Tom wasn't expecting. His business hit a rough patch. Revenue dropped. He had to lay off some employees. Things got tight, really tight. And Tom had a decision to make. He could dip into his silver stack to cover expenses, or he could find another way. He chose to find another way. He tightened his belt. He cut costs. He worked harder, and he protected his silver stack. Because Tom understood something fundamental, That silver wasn't just an investment. It was his insurance policy. It was his backup plan. It was his family's security if everything else failed. Tom's business eventually recovered. He's doing fine now. But he told me something that stuck with me. He said, "Having that 100 ounces of silver gave me confidence during the worst time in my business. I knew that no matter what happened, I had real wealth that couldn't be taken away. It changed how I approached problems. It made me more resilient. It was worth every penny." That's the psychological power of reaching that 100-ounce milestone. It's not just about the metal. It's about what the metal represents: security, independence, options, freedom. Now I want to address the elephant in the room. Some people will say, "This is all doom and gloom. You're fear-mongering. The system isn't going to collapse. The dollar isn't going to fail. You're just trying to scare people into buying silver." And to those people I say, look at history. Every single fiat currency that has ever existed has eventually failed. Every single one. The average lifespan of a fiat currency is about 27 years. The dollar has been a pure fiat currency since 1971. Do the math. We're living on borrowed time. But even if you don't believe the system is going to collapse, even if you think everything is going to be fine, ask yourself this: what's the downside of owning 100 ounces of physical silver? In the worst-case scenario, where everything works out perfectly and the dollar remains strong and the economy booms and there are no crises, you own 100 ounces of silver. It's still worth something. It's still a tangible asset. You can still sell it. You haven't lost everything. But in the best-case scenario, where the system does face serious problems, where the dollar does lose significant value, where there is a crisis, you're protected. You have real wealth. You have options. You have security. That's called asymmetric risk. The downside is limited. The upside is enormous. And that's why smart investors, wealthy families, and anyone who understands monetary history is accumulating physical precious metals right now. They're not doing it because they're pessimistic. They're doing it because they're prudent. They're doing it because they understand that hope is not a strategy. They're doing it because they've learned from history that the time to prepare for a crisis is before the crisis happens, not during it. And here's the thing that really keeps me up at night. We're running out of time. The signs are everywhere if you know where to look. The repo market stress, the yield curve inversions, the bank failures, the commercial real estate crisis, the sovereign debt crisis, the geopolitical tensions, the supply chain disruptions, the energy crisis, the food crisis. These aren't isolated incidents. They're all connected. They're all symptoms of a system that's under enormous stress. And when that system breaks, and it will break, the people who prepared will be in a very different position than the people who didn't. So what do? You start today, not tomorrow, not next week, not when you have more money. Today. You take whatever you can afford, even if it's just enough to buy 1 ounce, and you start building your position. You set a goal of 100 ounces. You create a plan to get there. You execute that plan consistently, and you don't stop until you reach that goal. Because reaching 100 ounces of physical silver isn't just about having metal. It's about crossing a threshold. It's about joining a community of people who understand what's coming. It's about taking control of your financial future instead of leaving it in the hands of politicians and central bankers who have proven time and time again that they will sacrifice your wealth to maintain their power. 100 ounces of silver. That's the goal. That's the target. That's the line in the sand that separates those who are prepared from those who aren't. And the beautiful thing is, it's achievable. You don't have to be wealthy. You don't have to be an expert. You just have to be willing to take action. You have to be willing to go against the crowd. You have to be willing to trust thousands of years of monetary history instead of the promises of politicians who have every incentive to lie to you. The window is closing. The premiums are still reasonable. The availability is still decent. The price is still within reach for most people. But that won't last forever. When the next crisis hits, when the next bank fails, when the next currency collapses, when the next geopolitical event shakes the markets, everyone is going to rush into physical precious metals at the same time. And when that happens, you won't be able to get it. The dealers will be sold out. The premiums will be astronomical. The waiting lists will be months long. Don't let that be you. Don't be the person who knew what was coming but didn't act. Don't be the person who has to explain to their family why they didn't protect their wealth when they had the chance. 100 ounces of silver. Make it your goal. Make it your mission. Make it your priority. Because in the world that's coming, the world that's already here, if you're paying attention, having real money is going to make all the difference. And silver is real money. It has been for 5,000 years. It will be for the next 5,000 years. Long after the dollar is a footnote in history books, long after the current monetary system has collapsed and been replaced, silver will still be money. Make sure you have yours. Now, before we wrap up, I want to make sure you take advantage of something special. If you've watched this far, you're clearly serious about protecting your wealth, and I want to reward that. In the description below, there's information about a free one-on-one educational web conference. No obligation, no sales pitch, just education. But here's the thing. This is only available to American retirees with at least $100,000 in any retirement account. If that's you, mention that you watched this video all the way through, and you'll get access to this exclusive session where we'll walk through specific strategies for protecting your retirement wealth in the current environment. This isn't for everyone. It's only for people who are serious about taking action. So if that's you, check out the description and schedule your session.